Okay, so sound is one of the most integral parts in pretty much any game, and a lot of people don't realize that. They tend to overlook what sound is actually meant for. Sound adds that feeling, the emotion to most games. In order to realize this, I challenge you to go play some game, especially like a horror game or a rhythm game or something along those lines, with the sound off. And what you realize is that it just doesn't have the same effect. Scary games aren't as scary anymore. Trying to play something like Guitar Hero or a Rock Band or Frets on Fire, whatever rhythm game you're into, it just doesn't have that same effect. You can't use the beat. You can't do anything except you're just gamifying it, and it loses all of its luster. So this is why sound is so important. Now, the good news is that putting sound in our Java programs is actually really straightforward to do. What you do need to realize a few things. Basically, when we want to create sound effects or music, we're actually going to be creating the exact same type of variable. But the way that we use that variable is going to be different. So what you need to realize is that we have two data types that we can work with. So whenever you're downloading sounds or making your own sounds using whatever software you want to realize that we can work in either a .wav format or a .mp3 format. So what I mean by that is MP3s are what you normally think of in terms of music files. They're usually longer in length, maybe a couple minutes long, but they're pretty small in size. The reason why they're small in size is that they are compressed. The computer physically compresses them down into less data. But that comes at a cost, because in order to play that sound, it has to be decompressed and expanded. Now, the other data type we talked about was .wav format, WAV. Now, these ones are not compressed, but they're about 10 times the size. So, for example, a 1 minute song, a 1 minute MP3 song would be about a megabit large, but or a megabyte large, I should say. Whereas a wave format of the exact same song would be about 10 megabytes. And it's just because it's not compressed. That's the only difference. But it has the luxury of running a lot faster. So when it loads, it doesn't have to decompress. So to summarize, here's what I want you to think about. Whenever you're going to do sound effects, these are things that we need to happen fast and frequently. We want to use wave files, things that are not compressed. Whenever we want to do background music, which are longer in size and take up more data, we want to use MP3 files. So depending on where you get your songs, I do have resources for you. If you go to the website called freesound.org, you can download tons of sound effects there. I'll put a link in the PowerPoint for you so you can take a look there. In terms of music files, use whatever means you want. We're not making any money off of these things. You're not selling your game or anything like that. So what you use is going to be relatively okay. You can pull it from whatever source. Maybe you rip it from somewhere, like rip it from a CD, whatever, if you know what that is. Or you have some other way of getting MP3s. It doesn't really matter. So MP3s for music, wave files for sound effects. Now, what if you find a sound effect or a song that you really want, but it's not in the correct format? Well, there's tons of online converters out there. Just type in like online audio converter, and you'll be able to find something that'll convert one song file or one music file or sound file into another type very easily. There's also a program called Audacity, Audacity, and it's completely free. You can download it. It's on all of our school computers as well. And you can actually edit your own sound effects and everything like that right in there. And even save other songs as other music types, sound types, I should say. So how do we actually do the code? Well, to do the code, we need to create a variable to store our sound effect. So first of all, let me say that I've already put some sound effects inside of our project. Now, I will give you access to these sound effects. I'm going to give you this sounds.zip file. So you can open this, download it, and you can see I've already put some sound effects in there and some music in there. So the music is .mp3 and the sound effects are in .wav. So you can download these, which I did, and then I added them into the directory for my project. So I went into my project, which is right here, called Java Sound Demo. I went into the res folder, which is short for resources. Then I went to the sounds folder, and I dropped them in the appropriate folder. So my sound effects go in the effects folder, and my music goes into the music folder. Great. Now this adds it to here, but what about in Eclipse? Eclipse, it's actually here too, but you have to make sure to refresh this. So hit right click on there and just hit refresh. And if we look down in our Reds folder, oh, I didn't add images, sorry, sounds, and there's my effects and my music. So I have them. They're now part of the project. Now all I have to do is do the code to actually make them work. So for every sound that you want to play, whether it's music or a sound effect, we're going to create a new variable of type sound clip. Now I've added 2 sound effects and 2 music. So let's do a sound effect to start out with. Let's do the gunshot. So the variable is going to be called of type sound effect. And I'm just going to call this gunshot SND. I like to put that SND at the end to signify that it is a sound effect. And then we'll also do one for music as well. So let's do sound effect. Let's do the twinkle. Twinkle MSC, which is short for music. Makes perfect sense, right? Now I'm getting some errors in here. Let's see what those errors actually are. Sound effect cannot be resolved as type. It will be once I actually create the variable for it. Oh, sorry, not sound effect, sound clip. That's why. My mistake. Sound clip. There we go. All right, so we've created the variables, but we haven't actually loaded the data. That happens in load content, of course. Same place it always does. So I'm going to load in my sound effects first. My sound effect. Actually, this is gunshot is one word, so we're just going to put that down as a lowercase s. So gunshot SND is equal to, now this is how we load it in, new sound clip. Now the first thing you need to do is specify the path that we find it. So we find it in the sounds folder first, so /sounds. Then it's inside of my effects folder. Oops. And then it is called gunshot2.wav. What happened to gunshot 1? I don't know. Now the last thing it needs one more variable. And this variable is a Boolean. The Boolean basically represents whether the sound is interruptible or not. And I'll demonstrate this in a second. But basically what interruptible means is if I try to play the sound and it's currently playing, interruptible will let me do that. It'll say, start this one over again. Just run it again. If that interruptible is set to false, it'll make me wait until the sound is done before it'll let me play again. Now, this can be a pain when you're trying to make something like rapid fire type sound effects. But in other things, it may make sense to do that. But this is a gunshot. So if I'm using a handgun or a machine gun, I want that sound to be interruptible. So I'm going to set that to true. So that's all I need to do to load my sound effect. So sound clip, the location that it's located at, and whether I want it to be interruptible or not. Now I just got to play it. Now, typically speaking, when we want to play a sound effect, you don't want it playing constantly. Remember, our games run at 60 frames a second. So if I just played it right in here, this is going to sound terrible. I'm just going to say gunshot SND.play. And that will just play the gunshot sound. But the thing is, this is just in update in a random location. It's going to happen every single update, 60 times a second. So let's run it. I'll turn my volume up a little bit because you're going to have to hear this through my microphone. And that's it. Let's run. Sounds pretty terrible, right? Because it was basically trying to restart the sound 60 times a second. So that is not something we want to do. So sound effects will typically happen when some type of action occurs. So in our game, let's do it whenever the user hits the shoot button. Let's say the space key. So I could say if input.isKey released, let's say key event vk underscore space. So whenever they hit the space key, I want to play the gunshot sound. So gunshot snd.play. No errors or anything like that. Now when we run our program, got to click on here. Now if I hit space, we get one sound. Now if I pump it, you can hear that it actually starts overwriting itself, which is great. Now let me change that interruptible to false, and you're going to see the difference. I'm going to pump the space button again this time, but what you're going to see is that there's a noticeable delay in between. It actually physically waits for the sound to stop before the next one goes. Oops, I got to click on here first. You can see there's an audible pause. Now, and I was just tapping the space bar as fast as I possibly could. That doesn't mean if I double tap the space bar, it's going to play twice. It only plays it once. Basically what it's saying is try to play it. If you can't play it, too bad. That's it. So if I'm pumping that space key, eventually I'm going to get it to play again, right? But if I just double tap, I'm only getting one shot sound effect from it. Okay, so that's how we do sound effects. There's nothing else to it. Music is a little bit more involved because we have to make sure we're doing it at the right time. Typically, we're playing music for some type of reason. Maybe it's background music. Maybe it's some kind of victory fanfare. That kind of thing, depending on what you're doing. But let's get this twinkle music to play. So the first thing we need to do is load it. I'm a lazy man, so we're going to copy and paste this. This is going to be our twinkle MSC. And it's located not in our effects, but it is located in our music, and it is called twinkle.mp3. Now this is a, let's put that gunshot back to interruptible. Typically music, you don't necessarily want it interruptible because there's no point to doing that. We can do other things to music, but you don't usually want to interrupt it so you can kind of restart it. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to do so, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So we have our music, we've loaded our music, now we want to play our music. Now since it's background music, it makes perfect sense to start it playing immediately and load content. So it starts out. So if this were, for example, my menu music, I would definitely start it playing and load content. But if it were something else, maybe it was music for the end of game screen, or maybe it's music for the actual gameplay itself. I wouldn't necessarily start it and load content. I would start it when I went into that game state. So let's say, for example, I was in the menu state and I went from menu into gameplay. Well, that's when I would start playing that sound effect. I'll show you that in 1 second. But first of all, let's try doing it immediately from load content. So I'm just going to say twinkle msc.play. Now, when we do this, when we use the play method, it will play that song once. Oops. Or not. Let's see what's going on with that guy. We didn't get an error. It's not really playing it, though. Let's figure this out. Okay, I tracked down what the issue with this is. For some reason, if we have this set to false, it won't let us play it immediately and load content. So if we have it set to non-interruptible, it won't let us do this in load content. So if I set this to true, it will play. It just takes a second to load. And I think that's the issue. It's trying to play it before it's loaded. So it's just not working out. So if I had this as the gunshot sound, it would work fine because the gunshot is instantaneously loaded because it's both small and non-compressed. So you have two choices here. You either deal with the fact that it's interruptible and just keep it as true, or you have some other factor that sets it playing later on. So let me demonstrate that. So let's say, for example, I don't want to play this immediately. I want to play it when it goes from menu into gameplay. So let's say, for example, when the user hits the enter key when they're in menu. So if input.is key released key event .vk underscore enter. So when they hit the enter key while they're in the main menu, then I'm going to set the game state equal to gameplay. And, oops. And I'm also going to start the music. So I'm going to start the twinkle sound effect. Twinkle music. .play. Now we're going to start the game off in the menu state instead of gameplay. So now when we run our program, so now if I hit the enter key, it's going into the play state now, a gameplay state now, I should say. There we go. And it started playing as soon as it was ready to do so. Loading, right? So Wave formats are definitely better in terms of loading because they don't have to decompress, but they're physically larger in size, so it's a trade-off. So that's how we would actually play it based on some form of trigger, such as going to a new game state. Maybe you want to do it when you pause the game or something like that. Whatever you want, you have control over that. So what else can we do with sound effects? Well, we can do things like play with their volume. Maybe that gunshot sound is just simply too loud, and I want to reduce its sound effect. So I can set its volume. So I could say gunshot sound dot set volume. Now it's going to be some value between 0 and 1. So if I put it at 0.5, what that does is it sets it to half the volume. If I put it at 0.75, it puts it at 3/4 volume. So let's put it at 0.5 sound. And if we run this again, and now when we hit the, oops, I forgot we're in the menu state. So let's go into the gameplay state. Start it off there. Now, if I hit this gunshot, you can hear it was a lot quieter this time. You can probably barely even hear that over my mic. Now let me comment out that line of code so you can hear it at normal volume. It's quite a bit different. In fact, it's double the volume. So we can set the volume to a specific value. You could even do something like give the user the control over it. Maybe they use like the up and down arrows to increase or decrease the volume. So for example, maybe in gameplay, I have something like this. We'll edit the twinkle music sound. So if input dot is key released, key event dot vk up. So if we get the up key, we're going to increase the volume, but we got to make sure that we don't go past the value of 1, right? So we're going to say, where is it? So we're going to set the twinkle volume, twinkle music dot set volume. Now I want to set it to a little bit higher than it currently is. Well, how do I know what it currently is? Well, I can get the volume. Oops. Dot get volume. So that gets me the current volume, and I'm just going to add a little bit to it. Let's add 0.1. So it's going to go up 10%. Now, of course, that might be too much. Right? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure in my game engine I have it set so you can't actually exceed a value of 1, but we can actually check that. I don't remember. It's been a while since I looked at that. So you're actually going to get to see the code itself. Let's see. Let's go into the sound clip code. So let's go down to set volume. Where is set volume? Where did I do that? Oh yeah. So I have set volume to make sure that we never go past the maximum value. So we're good to go there. So it uses the math.max, math.min stuff. Okay, that's good to know. So that means you can't ever go past the maximum value, so you're safe. So you can just continually add. Now, of course, if we want to go up with the up arrow, then we also want to go down with the down arrow. So let's do an else if we get down. And let's put this at 0. Let's put that as subtract 0.1. So it's going to go up, or it's going to go down. So let's give this a try. That means we need to have the music playing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this menu thing to get into the gameplay. So it starts the twinkle music. So that means we have to start back in menu. Let's try this again. Hopefully I didn't break anything. So enter key to get to gameplay. All right. So it should be at max volume right now. So if I hit up, nothing should happen. But let's hit down. You can hear it get quieter with every press, or louder. So you have full control here. Now I have this on is key release. You could have it just as is key down or is key press, so you could hold it if you want. But this just shows you that we do have more control over it than you think. Typically speaking, there's other functionality we can use as well, such as like pause. So you can pause a sound effect. So maybe, for example, we get if input dot is key released, let's say key event, oops, dot vk, let's say the enter key. No, let's use the P key. So we use P to pause it. So if we get the pause key, oh, I missed an error. There we go. So if we get the pause key, the P key, then what we're going to do is we're going to pause it. So we can say twinkle SND or music MSC. I spelled twinkle wrong. MSC dot pause. And now we should be able to run it and pause it now with the P key. Okay, now the P key, and it pauses. Now I don't have anything to unpause it though. How do I unpause it? Well, basically I want to turn it on or off. So I want to say, well, if it's not paused, then pause it. If it is paused, then unpause it. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, to unpause something, all we simply do is just call play again. And that will just automatically play it, right? But how do I know if it's paused? I have to track that. So I'm going to create a Boolean. And I'm going to call it music paused. And it's going to start off as false because the music is not currently paused at this point. So whenever I pause it, I'm going to set it to true. And whenever I unpause it, I'm going to set it to false. So first thing, I check my P key. Now I'm going to check to see whether it's currently paused or not. So if music paused is true, is false. So if it's not currently paused, then I want to pause it. And I also need to set music pause to true. Else, I'm going to do the exact opposite. So I'm going to play the music, dot play, and I'm going to set the music pause to false now. So now it should give me the ability to, whenever I hit the P key, it basically toggles it on and off. Let's try this. All right, now the P key, paused, and hit the P key again, unpaused. Perfect. Now the last thing I wanted to show you is that we actually have two options for playing. So whenever you're playing a sound effect, you're always going to use just the play method. But for music, a lot of times, remember how play works. It simply plays the sound once. But what if you're playing a game and the music ends before you're done the level? That's going to be pretty awkward. You're going to have some awkward silence there. So there's a second option called play looping. So if you say play looping, when the song ends, it'll just restart again. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate this because the song's too long. But basically, you can just continually, you just leave this going, and it'll just go forever. Okay? So that is about it. The one last thing I would recommend is make sure that whenever you're playing a music or sound effect or anything like that, you don't have it in the middle of nowhere. Because what's going to happen is it's going to continually try and restart it and play it again. And that's just going to give you either A, your program is going to freeze, or B, you're going to get that kind of shotgun, machine gun sound effect we saw when we first started doing this. So that's how we play sound and music inside of the Java graphical game engine. If you have any questions, check out the PowerPoint, and that should give you all your answers that you need. Good luck and have fun.